Hi everyone. You can still gather around in a bit. There'll be a further break later on to get any other drinks and stuff. However, we've got lots of brilliant things coming up now. I just want to introduce myself real quick. So I'm Grace Goodman. I'm from YPAS, and we've got...
I'm Dean. I'm also from YPAS.
Yeah. It's a pleasure being up here today.
So, should we give a little introduction? So, YPAS stands for the Young Persons Advisory Service in Liverpool. So we are young people who've been employed in the organisation, and we're currently working as part of the participation team. So do you want to talk a little bit about sort of the opportunities that we've had in this kind of field, Grace?
Yeah, so we've done lots of different projects. Previously, a couple of years ago, we were on the PAC project. So lots and lots going on, but also with the IAP different trainings, we've shared our own lived experience as well. So you might notice us as well with some of the CWP trainings. But yeah, moving swiftly on, enough about us.
Enough about us, we'll move to the important stuff. So the next presentation that we're going to see today is called Finding Me. It's all about talking you through the journey of a young person who has accessed low intensity CBT with a wellbeing practitioner. This will be followed by the experiences of the clinicians who are delivering low intensity CBT within Lincolnshire and the career paths that previous wellbeing practitioners have taken. So to talk through that in more detail, we have from the Lincolnshire Partnership NHS Foundation Trust, Sarah Priestley, Lucy Ainscough and Nicki Toyne. Thank you.
Weren't they fabulous? Should we just have them up here instead of us? They were much better than we could be.
Certainly swap. So, hello. Everyone can hear me, I'm hoping. So, good afternoon. Welcome to our presentation on Finding Me. Thank you. We've got lots of microphones. What am I looking for?
Should it be on? Screen on? Can we have this screen on, please? We can't. Okay.
We can hope for the best. That's okay. Just go with it, people. Go with it. So I guess in terms of where we're from, so we've come over from Lincolnshire. So Lincolnshire NHS Foundation Trust. Bit of a mouthful. So LPFT is often what we call it. So. Hello everybody. We'll just do some brief introductions before we get started. So my name's Sarah Priestley and I'm one of the CBT managers for CYP services in our area.
Okay. Good afternoon everybody. My name is Lucy Ainscough. I'm also a CBT manager within LPFT.
And I'm Nicki Toyne. I'm a CWP.
So I guess in terms of what we're actually going to be talking about, Lucy and I are going to talk to you a bit about our locality and the CYP services that we offer. And then we're going to pass over to Nicki, who's going to take you through the journey of one of the young people that she's worked with as wellbeing practitioner. Can I move? I suppose I need a microphone. Oh. Thank you. I'm probably going to move around more than you guys. In terms of where we actually are, so in terms of Lincolnshire, just pop your hand up for me if you know where Lincolnshire is, first of all. Oh, that's pretty good going. I'm impressed with that. So we're a very large rural county. You can see we go all the way up to the north in North East Links to Grimsby, and we go all the way down to the south where Stamford is. We're also home to the lovely Skegness, so I advise if you've not been there, do go. It's just wonderful. And I guess in terms of where we are in England, we fit within the East Midlands. So guys who are from the Midlands, this is your chance to kind of give a bit of a cheer. Yeah. And we are along the east coast, hence why we've got Skegness, which is by the sea, and Boston, etc. So Lincolnshire's got quite a large number of children and young people, so that's 0 to 19. You can see in terms of where that's greatest, we've got Lincoln in Lincolnshire. 23.8% of our population there is actually 0 to 19. Closely followed by Boston. The technician did ask me earlier if I wanted to use the pointer, and I did say no, but I might just... There we go, there's Lincoln. So yeah, that's kind of where we are really. So I'm just going to pass over to Lucy, who's going to talk to you a bit more about CYP services.
Right, okay, can you move on? Thank you. So, just moving on from what Sarah said, we're just now looking at the referrals within CYP services. We've had 8,322 referrals between April 2022 to 2023. Now, those referrals to our service are including CAMHS, Healthy Minds, our MHST team, home treatment, forensics, and our complex needs, which I'll go into a bit more detail. Out of those referrals, 89% of those were accepted for treatment, which is brilliant news. 7% of those were rejected or signposted to another service, and 4% disengaged. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of an overview of the service streams that come into us. So to start with, we have a single point of access where anyone can refer in professionals, and we also have a self-referral, so young people can contact us, make a self-referral and get an appointment to see us, which is brilliant because it really makes sure we can access all those young people. From that point, we can then make an assessment and make sure they go to the right people. So just to give you a bit of an overview of what some of those services are, we have our Healthy Mind service. That was developed through a partnership with Lincolnshire County Council, and it was to look at emotional well-being for our young people up to the age of 19. The plan for that was to look at early intervention, normalising some of those emotions, looking at some coping skills, and that ranges really in terms of what the intervention we offer. So that could be group work, it could be workshops, or it could be one-to-one. Now, just to share with you here, the professionals that's within that team is a real mixture. So we have counsellors, we have wellbeing practitioners, we also have other specialist mental health practitioners that are offering low-intensity interventions. Okay, so moving on to CAMHS. We all know what CAMHS is probably. So CAMHS is that kind of higher end work that we need to look at. So that will be using an MDT approach, and we'll be offering kind of high intensity CBT using psychologists, psychiatrists. Those services with that would be our forensic service, and we could signpost off to forensics, LD, an eating disorder, etc., whatever's required. Our final one is our mental health support team. And again, these run slightly differently to our Healthy Minds team, because obviously, as you all know, we have lots of mental health support teams now across the country. And we have a mixture of CBT therapists and EMHPs within those teams that are offering both low and high intervention. So the big question is, where do our wellbeing practitioners fit into all of this? Okay, so originally they were aligned with core CAMHS when they first came into the service. And we kind of had a look at it and thought, actually that's not going to work in terms of if they don't meet the CAMHS criteria, the young people, where are they going to get some intervention? So we moved them back to our Healthy Mind service, and that's where they are now. We've had several cohorts now that have come through and have been really successful within those teams. Hence, I'm going to hand that over to Nicki to talk about that journey. Thank you.
Hello, can you all hear me? So a little bit about me then. So I'm a CWP and I'm sitting in the Healthy Minds service at the moment. I completed my training in 2018, and then this year I was really lucky to be offered a place on the low intensity supervisor training, and I'm completing that course with Northampton University. When I completed my training there were 5 others with me, and then we had 6 other qualified CWPs from previous cohort in the service. There's currently only 2 of us left. There's 4 more in training. A further 9 have gone on to other roles within the wider service. So we thought it might be useful to share one of their stories. So I'm going to let Sarah put a video on of Vicky, who went on to complete her CBT training, and she now works within the mental health support team.
I really hope this works.
Hi, my name's Vicky Hardy and I work for Lincolnshire Partnership Foundation Trust. I'm here to share just a little part of my professional journey with you. So back in 2017, I started working for the Trust in the Children and Young People's Emotional Wellbeing Service. In 2019, I was lucky enough to be offered the chance to complete my Wellbeing Practitioner training for children and young people. I studied at Northampton Uni for a year, and then following this, I proceeded to get a promotion in the Trust as a Band 5 practitioner. So this was involving delivering clinical supervision and supporting the Band 4 members of the team. In 2021, I joined the mental health support teams and completed my high intensity CBT training. This was really tough over a year, but actually so worthwhile. And I feel like my knowledge base is massively increased from doing this training. Jump forward to 2023, and I was lucky enough to become a CBT supervisor for the mental health support teams, and am now a Band 7 in the service. I hope your journey is as good as...
It
That was
said
short but sweet.
excited as mine. Okay, so now I'd like to share with you a case study of a young person. Makes me a little bit emotional. I worked with recently. This is Ted. He's fabulous. Ted came to me via a GP referral that highlighted low mood and anxiety, a little bit of which I've got now, a bit of anxiety, some of which was linked to his transgender identity. My initial assessment of Ted also identified some emotional dysregulation, a bit like this, and some low self-esteem. Sorry, next slide. So this was his initial ARCADS. That indicated social phobia as the highest presentation. So I chatted with Ted about that, and he considered that that wasn't a problem for him. He was more accepted that actually that's part of me. So we talked about it quite a lot, and he felt that the main problem was he was not putting in enough effort into his schoolwork. He agreed that he would complete a 5 areas model that I'd taken him through in his assessment for home practice, so that we would have an example of a situation that he found difficult. We talked to Ted a little bit more about his answers in the ARCADS around low mood and depression, and despite not scoring really highly, it was an area that he was really struggling with. So this then linked to his treatment goals. I don't know if you can see much on there, it's quite small. So he did return me this example of a 5 areas model. It reflected low mood, and it highlighted a really negative way that Ted felt about himself. The physical sensations, they were really worrying for Ted, so we did quite a lot of work around that. And actually just knowing about fight, flight, freeze really normalised that for him. We discussed the situations that were difficult for him. He gave me quite a few more examples. But he strongly felt that his main problem was his lack of motivation, and that if he could work harder, he would feel better about himself. So I introduced the idea of brief BA and how this would work, and Ted gave it a go. So we now have a problem statement that I hope won't make me cry. There's an actor voice in this, but these were Ted's words.
Again, really hope it works. No.
Oh. We were told you just click.
If anybody knows what else I'm supposed to do, I was told just click go. I can try and laser it and see if that works.
Overwhelmed and tired.
Oh.
This is triggered by having too much coursework to do or not working hard enough. When this happens, I think that I'm not going to achieve anything in my life. I need to work harder. I won't get into university. I will let my parents down. I experience physical symptoms of feeling sick, palpitations, headaches, heavy arms and legs, and no appetite. I notice that I respond by avoiding everyone and everything, including my coursework. I feel guilty, sleeping, being irritable with friends and family, spending time scrolling through my phone on Instagram or YouTube. This is a problem in my life because my coursework is building up. I feel bad about the way I treat people when I'm struggling. I want to achieve things in my life, and that won't happen if I don't start working harder, because I will fail my exams and won't get into uni.
So these were some of Ted's treatment goals. He recognised that the guilt he felt about wasting time was having a huge impact on his mood, and he felt that in order to change this, he needed to just start doing more. I need to work harder. He said that so often. For Ted, this purely meant doing more of the essential activities like coursework and revision, etc. These were Ted's initial treatment goals. However, as we progressed through treatment, these were made smarter. So why did we choose Brief BA? He became so low that he couldn't find the motivation to wash, brush his teeth, or nourish himself with good food, let alone completing any coursework or revising for his exams. I explained to Ted that the ability to feel better has a lot to do with how you live your life on a day-to-day basis, and that beginning with support to identify how he currently spends his time, we could work together to build him more of what matters to him. This would in turn help him think more positively and feel better to break that vicious cycle of low mood. He highlighted that some of the lack of self-care was linked to his identity as a trans male, and it was hard to love a body that didn't physically fit with who he was inside. He spoke with a really critical inner voice, and he talked about wanting to be a better person, thinking about times in the past when he might have spoken abruptly to someone or treated them unfairly when his own mental health had been poor. We discussed where the critical voice came from, and Ted had some life experiences where adults had really high expectations of him that he found it hard to live up to. We agreed that Ted would try and catch any of those negative thoughts that he might have and challenge them with a kinder voice. And in each session that followed, I noticed he was doing that. If I didn't, I would catch them for him. So starting with small steps, his activity log for the start of Brief BA contained mainly those essential activities like homework and eating and sleeping. He did put little bits of time in for gaming and scrolling social media. But he was continually critical of himself for this because he didn't feel like he was doing enough schoolwork and spending too much time on other things. None of the activities that he spent time doing gave him much in the ACE eyes, and he did feel and if he did feel anything pleasant about them, he felt guilty that he was having fun instead of completing his homework. His list of meaningful activities contained things like reading and crafting and spending time with his cat. He was worried that he might not find the motivation to start the activity planner that I gave him for homework, so we did a little bit in the session, and we just added one thing from his meaningful activities to his list each day. His home practice was to highlight any that he achieved, but be kind to himself for any that he didn't. Amazingly, just over 1 week, the next time I saw him, he was smiling, he was lighter than previously, his whole presentation had changed, and he'd really engaged fully with Brief BA. It made him feel like he'd achieved something because he'd found that brushing his teeth had become routine again, not something he had to put on his planner. We had a giggle about that. We did look at the times when the activities were harder to achieve, but we looked actually, it was in the evenings when he was burnt out, and that's when he tended to put the essential activities, not the meaningful ones, so we just swapped them around a little bit. This is Ted's final arcads, and it speaks for itself. We did do the subscales each week as well. They consistently came down by 1 or 2 each week as I saw him. Should we move on, Sarah? Thank you. So what now? He regularly felt emotional in his sessions. He smiles more now, and he was tear-free for his last 3 sessions. I'm nearly done. He's able to be kind to himself and spend more time looking after himself. When he started looking after himself more, he started to feel better about himself, and then he was able to start doing other activities again. He's completed his exams and he got fantastic results. He's been to the GPs, now on the waiting list for the gender clinic. He attends the local trans youth group, and he can use this to access specific counselling around the gender-related difficulties that he has. And he's exploring assessment for neurodevelopmental conditions, and school are supporting him with that. So I asked Ted that if he was able to be here today to tell you all about his experience, what would he say? And he gave us this.
Even with support, it's a tough process, improving yourself and all. What you put in is what you get out. I suppose I was fortunate enough to have the drive to want to get better and hadn't had any negative experiences to put me off seeking help. I'm incredibly grateful for all the tools, but more importantly, the unending support I've received to help myself. And I've noticed subconsciously that I'm changing in the way I'm thinking and behaving.
We'd like to give special thanks at this point to Ted and to the other young people that we've obviously worked with. Without him and without the others, we wouldn't be stood here today anyway, and we wouldn't be having this conference either. So thank you to Ted. But also to Nicki. I think just a round of applause for Nicki, because we... Thank you. Specifically for Nicki, we pushed her out of a comfort zone. Me and Lucy may have railroaded her into coming today, so we really appreciate that you have come, so thank you. And we would say any questions, but I don't think we've got time, so sorry guys, you can't. But I don't know, did we run out of time? Did we do it in time? Because I did... Did we run out of time? Oh, I said I'd do a mic drop if we didn't, but sorry, it's... we did. Thank you.
Thank you for such a powerful presentation. That was really good.
And the art was gorgeous as well.
Yeah.
Just love to add that in as well. Okay, so next up we've got a trainee story. So this is a group of people from the Northwest CYWPs will share their experiences of being a CYP trainee, and this talk will give more personal insight into the CYP training year, highlighting some of the common themes shared in relation to challenges, the benefits of completing the year, and overall the success of the CYPs.
So there is quite a few speakers for this one, so bear with us. I just want to make sure I get everyone's name right. So delivering this presentation, we have Katie Jamieson from Alder Children's NHS Foundation Trust, Keysha Binns from YPAS, Sarah Riding from the Greater Manchester Mental Health NHS Foundation Trust, Chloe Reanney, also from Alder, and Marilla Tolfree from YPAS. Welcome to the stage.
Hi everyone. Hello and good afternoon everyone. Thank you for the introduction. We've had a really great day so far, and we've thoroughly enjoyed what we hope will be the first of many CYWP conferences that we can attend. As mentioned, we are representing the Northwest today, primarily Liverpool and Bolton. You will recognise that we do refer to ourselves as CYWPs, and that's just to avoid confusion with our colleagues at the Cheshire Wirral Partnership. So our topic of discussion is a trainee story. And we hope that this will be an opportunity for a lot of you in the room to reminisce about your time as trainees, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, but also for senior leaders, commissioners, etc., you know, to get sort of an idea of what it was like for us as trainees. And sort of most importantly, really, we're considering what the future of the CYWP role is.
Is this the pointer by any chance? Apologies, we didn't practice with this beforehand.
So we thought we'd just start by introducing ourselves. So my name's Chloe Reanney. I'm a mental health practitioner at Sefton CAMHS, CYWP and trainee clinical supervisor for CYWPs as well.
And I'm Sarah Riding. I work for Bolton CAMHS as a children and young people's wellbeing practitioner.
I'm Keysha. I'm from the Young Persons Advisory Service in Liverpool. I'm on the PCL team.
And hi everyone, my name is Marilla. I work alongside Keysha at the Young Persons Advisory Service. I am a CYWP practitioner, a wellbeing team lead, actually overseeing the support for our most current cohort of trainees, and I also work on our LGBTQ+ youth groups.
And my name's Katie, and I'm also a CYWP based at Sefton CAMHS with the lovely Chloe.
And we'd just like to also say a special thanks to Robin Davies, who, without her, our technical skills would not have managed the video that you're going to see today. And also a big thank you to everybody who contributed to the video that we are going to show you. You might recognise some people that you trained with. don't fail me now. Let's do this. Come on, you know you want to. There we go. Oh no, see?
Okay, so firstly, before we show you our video, we'd like a bit of our audience participation, nothing too stressful. I'm sure lots of you, especially those of you who have trained with the lovely Kirsty, you'll know all about Mentimeters. So I hope that's big enough that it's come up on the screen okay. But if you can scan the QR code, if that doesn't work, if you just go on to menti.com, and if you input that code, so that's 87037071, and we're just asking for a bit of feedback really. So in 3 words, what would you want to say to others about the CYWP role? For those of you who haven't done the actual training, I know there may be some of you in the room, please feel free to contribute anyway, that'd be great.
Just as an aside, whoever's in charge of tech, it mentions you have to accept the add-in, and I wonder if that's what we're going to need for the live results. Sorry in advance. We're not the smoothest, but, you know, we'll get there, we'll get there. Okay. So we're going to come back to this kind of later on as well, so we'll give you all a chance to sort of fill that in, and then we're going to come back to the results towards the end of the presentation. Okay, so this is where we're going to have a video where we'd ask some qualified children and young people's wellbeing practitioners to sort of share what they value and what they found challenging about the wellbeing practitioner course. And a number of people were kind enough to sort of provide some video clips that we could use today. So hopefully this is where we see...
What did you value about the CWP course?
Has got to be the people that I was training with, teachers, businessmen. That for me brought a real richness to the training.
The ability to formulate, to understand the main problem for that young person.
I think learning those interventions, just knowing that the interventions are evidence-based.
They opened a lot of doors for me. It's really allowed me to develop a career in this field.
The quality of tutoring and teaching with ample opportunity for skills practice, reflective and experiential learning. What did you find challenging?
The disparity between when the interventions were taught to when I was picking up cases.
Juggling the service needs with the expectations of the course could be really hard at times.
The fact that I had to basically de-skill myself to learn the new skills that I have now.
The challenge of being kind of brought back to a place where you're learning something very new, it kind of strips you back a little bit.
COVID, the challenge of COVID, working online with people was really challenging in terms of like confidentiality. And as practitioners, adapting the way we approach things.
That balance as an adult learner of completing a postgraduate qualification alongside being in practice.
Being the first CWPs in our trust meant that there was a lot of organisational type work and networking that needed to be done, which then had a knock-on effect on us being able to get stuck into the clinical practice. And I suppose just that balance in general of slotting into an existing organisation while still learning the role yourself.
The almighty portfolio.
Now you have completed your trainee journey. What do you enjoy about being a CWP?
Working collaboratively with the children, their families, being able to bring everybody together.
It also allows you scope to bring your own creativity, your own personality, and a bit of flexibility alongside that fidelity to model.
Light bulb moments. Breakthroughs, not just for the young people, but for me as well.
The level of supervision that you get, I felt very supported along the way.
Using roles to help sort of understand the presentations of young people, to monitor progress.
The absolutely invaluable high quality supervision and that continuing link with the IAP Training Centre for things like CPD, further opportunities, and just general liaison.
Just having that space for me to be curious, that's what I really enjoy about my job.
Hi again. So this next bit is just a little bit about all of our individual journeys into CYWP and where we currently are in services. So I started out as a youth worker, did my BA Honours back in Edge Hill. I spent some time with the youth engagement team and then went on to work in alternative education for about 5 years, something like that. And then I worked in YPAS, which I know we've heard quite a lot about so far. and now I'm currently working in Sefton CAMHS with the lovely Katie. And when I think about my journey, it was an interesting one because I was 2020 when COVID hit. So we started off face-to-face. I think we did about 2-3 months, and then we all went home for 2 months and came back virtual. So it was an eye-opener, I think, as a trainee, but also it changed the way we all worked, the way we offered, and it increased accessibility for children and young people. No matter where they were based, it was a lot easier for everyone to access an intervention. When I think about where my future looks, I'm hoping to pass the supervisor's course. That would be nice. And continue doing CYWP work and clinical supervision.
Hi, so as you know, I'm Sarah from Bolton CAMHS. So just to give you a bit of an overview of kind of my journey from the training. Prior to doing the Wellbeing Practitioner training, I didn't actually have any mental health background or experience whatsoever. I'd worked for a university in higher education. I'd worked in an outreach team sort of supporting young people from less represented backgrounds to access higher education. So that did involve being a learning mentor, helping young people with things like revision skills. So I got to do that one-to-one work with young people, but I hadn't actually ever worked specifically on mental health, and it was something I was really passionate about. You know, the young people I was seeing would often be stressed and anxious about school and exams and things like that. So I realised, oh, this is something I'm really passionate about. Why am I not doing a career in this? And I had no clinical experience. I'd had no mental health risk assessment training. That was totally new to me. And ultimately, it was really impractical to go and fund further study. I'd done my degree in psychology, but I didn't necessarily feel that I'd then been able to go into a career I wanted to as such, or hadn't considered it. And it was only when I had this moment where I saw the track jobs, maybe we all had that moment where we thought, oh, this sounds too good to be true. You know, I can get paid to do something I'm passionate about, and I get a qualification. Ticks all the boxes, amazing. So yeah, I was lucky enough to get onto cohort 5 of the training, and I worked in a charity, Child Action Northwest, for the training year. I think things I found most challenging about the course was probably finding suitable cases and accessing those suitable cases, and I have a feeling other wellbeing practitioners might echo that as well. But also the other challenge, but which I think the course did a good job of helping me with, was dealing with risk assessments and dealing with risk. That was very overwhelming to me. It made me quite anxious. But actually, the course does it in such a clear, structured way and gives so much practical guidance that actually I felt really contained and really safe to sort of do that. And then ultimately, what I valued the most is that it's allowed me to pursue a passion, to upskill, to learn and earn money at the same time, which is pretty amazing, because, you know, cost of living, it wouldn't have been feasible otherwise. So yeah, I'm really grateful that I got the opportunity to do it, and yeah, I feel really honoured actually that I get to do this work on a day-to-day basis.
Let's get the timer back on. There's always one, isn't there? So I've stuck the photo up. I'm Keysha. Like I mentioned, I'm from YPAS, Liverpool. I'm part of cohort 6, and I am on the primary care liaison team. I've had experience in schools, doing drop-ins in the GP surgery and so on. Previously, I began working in nurseries. I was a nursery nurse, and then I went to get a degree in psychology, and this led to residential care. And I don't know if some of you know, but there's a lot of risk sometimes involved when working in residential. So I found it was quite natural for young people to just come and offload and make disclosures and have these conversations. And then I was being asked to go back and visit the homes because the children were opening up and talking to me, but they were refusing mental health support. They were refusing CAMHS appointments and so on. So I kind of felt like the young people were opening the cans of worms, and then I wasn't really like equipped fully with being able to help them either address the worms or, you know, put the lid kind of back on until we got the right support. So this led to me looking for some trainee positions. I ended up getting on the CYWP trainee course, and I think that definitely helped me to follow some structure, the evidence-based practice, can't forget about that, and just basically streamline, sorry, and basically structure and streamline the conversations I was having rather than just winging it because it felt natural. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think for me it was quite natural to address risk, the risk element of the course when we were doing assessments, because I've been around a lot of risk when I was doing residential. So that wasn't so much a challenge for me. I did have to learn, you know, the structure and everything. But for me, I didn't really have a therapeutic background. It was just natural for the young people to want to have conversations. So a challenge for... I think it was great that the cohort was so mixed because we all lent each other's experiences and skills. So when we were doing role plays, if anyone remembers the role play aspect of when we were doing role plays, some of us had more confidence with the risk element of things, some of us had more confidence from the therapeutic and counselling background. So I think it was great that we were able to like lend to each other and support each other throughout the training. And that's me. Thanks.
Okay, we've just been given our 2-minute warning, so I'm going to keep this really brief. But my background, similar to Chloe's, was youth and community work, and I did that for about a decade across many different settings. And as much as youth work will always hold a special place in my heart, something I was always really craving was structure in working with young people. And that's something that I really valued about the training course and my work now as a CYWP. And amongst that structure, you also get that flexibility to be creative as well, to really support the and meet the interests of that young person and the needs of them as well. I've absolutely loved working with parents through delivering this course and through doing the training. It was something that was really new to me, and I had some of those memorable light bulb moments with parents, which I won't ever forget, and I just think that's amazing to be able to support that longevity and supporting young people's mental health within that family home. Challenges for me, so getting started, I suppose the nature of recruit to train and the nature of learning on the job is that inevitable state of conscious incompetence and just having to ride the waves of doing that. That did not go without the amazing support from supervision, which is just invaluable throughout the whole year. And again, similar to Sarah, appropriate cases was a tricky balance between the trainee requirements for your cases and also service demands. And often a lot of the young people we find that are appropriate for those trainee cases tend to be the ones that can often go under radar at schools, ones who aren't putting their hands up necessarily but aren't known to teachers or getting those referrals in for support. Yeah, thank you very much for listening.
So finally, just to share my CYWP journey, I worked in education for over 10 years, so my background was in special educational needs, as well as in mainstream schools, and I always had, I guess, a bit of a vested interest in how children, young people, families, how they access, mainstream services such as education when they've got additional factors to consider. And that eventually led to me doing my master's in psychology, and at that point, I guess sort of similar to Sarah, really it was more, okay, well, this is what I enjoy doing, how can I amalgamate those two and, sort of get paid for doing that. So studied to become a CYWP along with Keysha and Marilla. I think to echo what Keysha was saying about how, everyone came from such a mixed background, which was great, loads of different input from different people. I think one of the biggest challenges that we faced, I speak for my colleagues that worked or work within the CAMHS service now, it was that service integration and finding that balance between the service expectations and demands and obviously the university course as well. And that has been a challenge, but it has been something that we've worked really, really hard to overcome. And, there's actually sort of a lot of real positives for us currently, which is brilliant. And I guess, yeah, those transferable skills, I think, you know, lots of people today have said that they've come from different backgrounds, and, you know, and that's one of the real key, like, sort of highlights, I guess, of these roles, is that actually you bring a lot of different experience with you regardless. And I think that's helpful for children, young people, families, because, you know, they're all living in different experiences as well. So, you know, really useful.
I don't know, did that work for people? Mentimeter? It did. Oh, I'm not sure whether we're going to be able to see your words.
Perhaps afterwards.
Yes, we'll do that.
If anyone's feeling brave and really wants to shout out any experience and help us out, they won't be able to see them.
Let's do our last slide.
Right.
Let's do
We'll
our
go
last
for it. We've
slide.
used enough of your time anyway. But actually, this is... Well, I love that. That was like really fun. That was amazing. As if we'd practiced that bit. I guess this is from the previous sort of, when it was sent out to some of the previous trainees. But I'll let you sort of show a summary.
Of this? Yes, okay. I suppose that though, I mean, the words speak for themselves, don't they? So just in case that Mentimeter didn't work, we just had this as a backup that we had sent out to previous trainees, so I'm sorry that didn't quite work still. But I suppose, yeah, rewarding, challenging, interesting, those words are coming through strongly there from people. And then on to our final slide, because our time is definitely up. So just some final thoughts, I suppose, just really encourage everyone just to think back and remember what it's like to be a trainee for any of your current trainees in your services. Offer as much encouragement as you can. Share resources. We know there's an abundance of resources out there. There were certainly in our service as well, and those that got shared with me was super helpful throughout my year. And yeah, be patient and kind, particularly when the going gets tough.
And can I just give a little shout out to the HEI crew, please, and the colleagues who've come to support us today. And remember to catch your crowns, because it does get tricky, but just keep going.
And then one of the other things we thought about, I love that catch your crown analogy. If anyone wants some more information about that, Keysha does a really good analogy, which I adore. But yeah, we just sort of discussed that the wellbeing practitioners alone can't champion the role and its purpose and its value. And I'm sure people are already doing this, but we do need that continued backing and support of, you know, the senior leaders and commissioners to sort of back all the wonderful work that we can clearly see here today people are doing.
So in summary, so just to continue with what Sarah was saying then, so we need you, okay, and that's everybody in this room. We are here today because we love the job that we do, and everyone here in terms of doing their bit, whichever role that may come in. And we do need those involved in policy, funding, training, etc., to keep on doing what they're doing, and that's across the UK. We need this in collaboration with all services, because there are a lot of different services, as we've heard today, that provide this CYWP role. And we really want to work towards increasing retention rates, work towards recognising the CYWP role for the amazing work that it entails. Most importantly, we're passionate about the impact of our role in the lives of children and young people, and we need all the amazing CYWPs here today to continue with your hard work, to promote and advocate the role within your service, and to recognise and celebrate the lives that you help to change every day. So very quickly, I don't know those of you who, if you arrived by tube, if you came via Baker Street, you may have seen the all on board display today, very apt. And it's what we do with what we have, and that's the measure of who we are. And I think it's just a reminder that we've already got so much and, you know, plenty of things to build on. So thank you.
Thank you all for sharing your experiences there. That was very informative. So moving swiftly on to our next presentation then, the topic that our next speakers will be discussing is the challenge of recruiting men into the CWP role. So they're very interested in kind of thinking how to recruit more men into the role, and how in turn this could have an impact on young men being able to access services and feeling comfortable in accessing those services. So yeah.
Can we give a warm welcome to Nick Mansfield and David Phillips from the University of Sussex, please?
Okay, so we're both here representing the University of Sussex, but also, where are you from, David?
Yeah, so I'm David. Hi, everyone. I'm a trainee CWP. So I study at University of Sussex, but I work for a Surrey Border Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. Yeah, I've got a few of my colleagues giving me a quick whoop there. And I can't tell you how relieved I am just to get through that, because that's quite a long title as well.
Okay, so would you mind just doing that a second? Okay, so just to run you through what we're going to cover, and it's definitely going to keep to time, this presentation. We did practice keeping it to time, so fingers crossed it will be spot on. But what we wanted to look at today, as someone alluded to earlier, it's obvious that there's more women than men in the field and with many fields, but we thought, is that a reason not to highlight it and to think about, is there anything we can do about that? So we want to first of all look at the ratio of men to women in the CWP field, but also, compare that to ratio in psychological professions in general. Think about, the possible reasons for this. We might all have some personal ideas, but, let's look at what anyone's thought about this. I'm going to be interviewing David with 3 key questions that he's going to answer to give us some insight into his journey into the trainee role. And then we don't at all pretend to have the answers, because otherwise we would have an even balance of gender on our current cohorts. But we would like to start thinking of ideas for action, things that we can maybe all start to change in our services to start to get that balance. And then just finishing on our commitment at the University of Sussex, where we are in our journey.
So, like Nick's already alluded to, we're just going to start off looking at statistics to illustrate the ratios of men to women in psychological services. So we're having a look at a graph on the left-hand side. So firstly, provision of services. So that's things like counsellors, therapists, clinical psychologists. The ratio of men or makeup of men for those roles is about 18 to 30%. And then going into management of services, only a slight increase. Where there's a significant change is roles that are kind of shaping services. So that's when you're thinking of health commissioners and those kind of working with and directly in government. Now that graph is showing data from 2014, but if we're thinking about more recent data as well, it's a similar picture. So, well, for those of you who've done a psychology undergraduate course, this might not come as a surprise to some of you. So 80% of those doing those courses from the data from 2020 are found to be female. And that actually translates into those going on to be clinical and educational psychologists as well. That's also at 80%. And then if we're thinking about the services that we're involved in as CWPs, so children and young people's mental health services, and looking at the most recent census data for that, and again, the ratios of men to women in that. So, for example, for the NHS, that's 15%. If we're thinking about local authority and voluntary services, it's around the same. A bit of a bumper for the independent sector, just under a quarter, but that kind of headline stays the same. It's, the proportion of female to men is much more in favour of women in that case. I know we're going to think about CWPs. So we had a look at the numbers the last few years at the University of Sussex. So as you can see, for the last 5 years, bar that one in 1920, it's very similar. Well, actually, I say it's similar. I think it's actually about 10% of the male makeup in those cohorts. I did also have a look at EMHP, see if there's any differences there. And again, it's much the same, it's those same ratios. And I'm thinking my personal experience, so there's 18 on my current cohort, and I'm one of 2 men. So yeah, what we're seeing at University of Sussex, that's certainly kind of representative of what we're seeing in some of the stats nationally as well.
Okay, so it might be obvious why it matters, but we thought we'd, bring some of those points, to the forefront of our mind. So it's about being representative of the children and young people population. I haven't seen any recent stats, but I'm guessing it averages around 50-50 of each gender. Obviously, there are young people, as there are adults, who identify as non-binary, and we're not negating that for the purpose of today, but we are concentrating specifically on the numbers of males, so we're not going to go into that in any detail. But in terms of being representative of the children and young people population, it's rightly been seen as important over many years now to try and get representation of different cultural groups, different ethnic groups within the workforce to represent society. But there doesn't, from my knowledge, seem to be the same emphasis to get more men into the field to represent the young people that we are going to be there to see. So I'm kind of proposing, should there not be equal focus on gender balance? That's what we're here to talk about today. And also, we can't assume that boys in schools or in the community would want to see a male practitioner, but should they not have the choice? If I was here doing a presentation about girls, should they not also have the choice as to which gender their practitioner is? But should there not be choice? And in a lot of services, there isn't that choice, purely for the fact that they may only have, say, 5 CWP positions, and they're all female, for example. So we're hypothesising that actually choice would help. Seeing males in the role might encourage more young men to come for help. So it's a possibility, but we're not saying that that's proven in research at the moment. And thinking about, the basic, if mental health problems are relevant for girls, boys, and those identifying as non-binary, by having a predominantly female workforce, what message are we giving? Is that the right message? Okay, so just to look at some possible reasons. So when we looked into this, we couldn't find any, lots of specific information about the wellbeing roles, the child wellbeing practitioner roles. So we drew on some information from the wider sort of field of psychology. And this first one is a team from the University of Leeds, the School of Psychology, who conducted some focus groups from their students. And, that they found that male students perceived studying a psychology degree primarily as a route into health education professions, which they then associated with women, which prevented them going into them. And if we're thinking about the second point on there, this is a study from the US, which looked at factors contributing to their low numbers of males on their psychology courses. And there's some really sort of stark points within there that we might all think, well, that may be the case for some people, but these are really common themes coming through, which I think is of concern. So there's a perception of psychology as a feminine profession, feminine topic, general public perceptions of psychology as being like a soft science, not as serious as some of the other STEM fields. It was thinking about the current low existing number of males in the roles put people off because there weren't those role models to look to. And there was also a perception that it required an individual to go into a career like this to have a really good emotional awareness, emotional literacy, be able to identify your own emotions, be able to reflect on those, that real ability which they as men thought maybe I don't have. I don't think that is particularly true, but that's their perception of what they couldn't do potentially. And then there's the whole thing about society's view of masculinity and how they were seeing, I have to fit in with society's views of masculinity. So if this is a feminine profession, this is not going to be for me. And even, to the point of being steered away from psychology, as even if they were interested in it, they were put off of it by peers, by teachers, by family. Okay. So from that wider kind of, with all that in mind, we thought, well, we hope it's interesting to you, but we thought it would be interesting to have a conversation, a live conversation in front of you here, to hear from David, because it's all very well me standing up here as a woman saying, well, I think this, I think that. Let's ask a man. Okay, so David, did you have any preconceptions about the CWP role and being a male in that role before you applied? And don't know if you want to think about that first part first.
Yeah, so I guess my only preconception in the CWP role, I'm thinking about my background. It's really nice to hear some people's backgrounds, seeing how they come to this job. Believe it or not, I was a musician and music teacher in my previous life before coming to this one, but had an interest in mental health, so I was kind of looking at mental health entry-level jobs online, kind of came across adult IAPs and then CWP and EMHP as well. And yeah, just from the research I was doing, it just seems like a popular destination for psychology graduates. So although I had that interest, I did kind of think, you know, well, what are my chances they might have a bit of step up. What I think is really positive that I would say though, is that on the job adverts, the CWP and EMHP, I thought they made it really clear that someone of my background would be welcome to apply. So I found that quite positive.
Okay, so that's what helped you actually overcome any barriers that you might have had and actually apply. Thank you for that. So thinking now as a trainee CWP, what experience or reflections do you now have in relation to the role and being a male in a female-dominated profession?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, you know, that you're saying it's a female-dominated profession, because I worked in primary schools a lot in my previous work, so I was kind of quite used to that. But yeah, for this line of work, I certainly wasn't, you know, I wasn't aware that that was the case. And, you know, being a man, I didn't kind of consider that when I was applying for this job, certainly. But, you know, it was kind of on my first day, I was clocking certain things, you know, meeting a bit of the teams, like, okay, I'm the only man. And then sort of my Microsoft Teams meetings, and then I went to my first university day. Like I said earlier, I'm one of two guys out of 18 as well. Yeah, so, you know, it certainly doesn't bother me, but you know, I wasn't aware, and I was thinking about the interview process. I feel very fortunate to have got it, considering my background. But I guess it did cross my mind, if services are looking to employ more men, potentially, that, you know, just thinking how I got the job, was it purely kind of on my performance at the interview and my experience with children and young people? Was there a little bit of a contribution to being a man that got that as well? So.
Okay, so you've thought about it quite a lot since, but you hadn't thought about it at all before, really, in terms of your gender. Okay, thank you. So I suppose lastly, what would you now tell a man who was thinking of coming into this role as a trainee?
I guess one thing I'd like to address first, and it's really interesting, it's already come up, I do feel like, I don't know, I can maybe understand why some men might be reluctant to go for the job. I don't think it's something that affects me, but I still think, like, in society, there's a bit of like this stubborn traditional view of what a man should do for a job, and that, you know, if they're worried about their perception, they might be reluctant to. What I think is really nice, since I've started my job, I feel like, you know, those in my service are kind of, they've been quite encouraging. They kind of acknowledge that's really positive for a man to be doing this job. Some of the qualified CWPs in my service have said, you know, maybe there's young people out there that would like to have the choice, potentially, to see a man as well in this role. And you also yourself, you kind of acknowledged that, you know, it's great to see some men doing the trainee course. At the same time, you know, if I'm, you know, if I've got here now and I came from a position of, you know, just wanting to do something mental health, working with young people, wanting to do something, you know, that I thought was meaningful, then I guess, like, why not? Why wouldn't you? Don't let that get in the way, basically.
So that would be the key message that you'd give to someone who is maybe a bit ambivalent. You know, you want to do it, why not give it a go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for that. Okay, so this is a bit where we thought we'd start to think about what could help to increase male representation. So thinking of the earlier focus groups at the University of Leeds, one thing that came out there was the importance of male role models in psychology in general. So with these available and visible to current students in any place of study, in addition to any prospective applicants, so thinking about who's there representing your open days, for example. Is the current educational establishment having any particular initiatives about gender and sort of rebalancing things? And then there's a study which looked at, so it's a much wider health study into male participation in nursing and allied health higher education courses, which of course, you know, we kind of fit within, but this is a wider remit. But I thought there were some key themes from this that we could pull out and think about, you know, how we could do better in it. So it's things like, you know, proactively, so rather than just being equal opportunities, you know, men can apply and men can get in, how do we encourage men into the role? Okay, 2 seconds. We'd be doing things like, so we're thinking of things like developing mentoring programs, having male role models, as I said. So in universities, it's that bit. In healthcare settings, in the services, the guidance was around things like high traffic areas, places with lots of public footfall, have male faces up on posters. You know, these are the staff that work here. Have adverts advertising, you know, we particularly need this part of the population to work here. So really using the opportunities to advertise, but also thinking about bringing it down even earlier in schools and colleges. How can you actually make this a career that people are looking at from a really early age, both boys and girls? In school, going on now, we've opened it up to people that don't have to have a degree. You know, they do their A-levels and they're thinking about careers. You know, why are we not there, and having a more proactive place in there? And then thinking just about the government and any national initiative that could be done, thinking about mature students and just any other way of widening the process. So very lastly, I think, so it's our community, our commitment at the University of Sussex. So we don't pretend to be very far forward with this. I will hold my hands up, but we are thinking about it and we're thinking what we can do and we're trying. So we are, so we've got a member of staff, Vicky Sop, and she works as a project officer in our wider psychological therapies team. And, you know, she's helping us engage in the audit through the Psychological Professions Network to actually monitor how inclusive we are. It doesn't specify gender specifically in that, but we're bringing that in as part of our audit to get a baseline to think about anything we now try, measure it against that, you know, is it working? And thinking about how we work with services to do our joint service and university interviews for the course. You know, we do have men on our teaching team. Can we make sure if it's a female from the service that it's a man from us? If it's a man from the service, it's a female from us. So just trying to get the balance wherever possible. So thank you. Yeah, and I suppose the very last bit is that we hope that we can be part of a national effort and that there will be an increase in male CWPs in time for the next conference. So thank you very much.